Welcome, entrepreneurs, students, and taxpayers. This is The Tipping Point, a show devoted to individuals trying to get ahead. We scour the region for the most competent individuals in their business-related fields and allow them to educate us on their specialty. Because knowledge is power, and with enough power, you can tip the scales in your favor. I'm your host, Gabriel Velez. Today's episode is brought to you by Tirani & Velez, an Irvine-based tax and accountancy firm concentrating on closely held businesses. Our guest today, Dane Petchul with Oracle College Planning, a firm devoted to helping students and parents get the most out of their college experience without going broke in the process. And as a reminder, if you like today's content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Welcome to the show, Dane. How are you doing?
Well, thank you. And I'm quite honored to be here and speaking to your audience there. And hopefully I can bring some value and insight to their lives.
Yep, that's what I'm trying to do every day. So let's start off. Obviously, we know what you're doing. I said it in the intro. You're in college planning and helping people, not overpay for a college education. But
Correct.
Give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Well, I've lived 3 lives, basically.
Okay.
First one would have been a tennis professional in my first life.
Okay.
And moved on from there and actually got into restaurants. And I owned and operated restaurants for 22 years. They were called Chicago Pizza and Pasta. And even though they were out here in California, the basis is I'm originally born and raised in Chicago. So they were highly, highly authentic.
Okay.
Then after 22 years in the restaurant business, life takes turns, and I was into the insurance business. And insurance, kind of jack of all trades, health insurance, a little term life insurance, a little disability insurance, but then had a, workshop on long-term care, really struck a chord, and I spent 4.5, 5 years just specializing in long-term care planning. Right. That's an industry that changed and evolved. And if you ever read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? Well, my cheese was moved in that instance and decided to continue to move on and went into actually retirement planning to where now I was working with individuals, to structure their retirement and income in retirement, and quickly realized that whether I was speaking with a younger person, newly out of college, who was now strapped with college debt, so they weren't able to make any moves, certainly regarding starting to save for retirement, or, people 45 to 55 years old who could see and understand that retirement was out on the horizon, but they had this obstacle called college in between with their kids, that was preventing them from even being able to imagine reaching retirement. So at that point in time, thought, well, I better look into this college thing. If I really want to be able to help my clients, I need to be able to help them mitigate, the costs of sending their kids to school, or, in the younger person's case, help them to come out of school with less debt so that they're able to move forward with their lives.
Right.
So from there, really, when you look at it with college planning, the starting point, or an easy point to look at, because it's been publicized so heavy, is the problem with student debt. I mean, right now, student debt is, it's an epidemic. It's, $1.4 trillion, and that's with a T, all right? And basically, kids are coming out of school with so much debt that they're unable to buy cars, they're unable to buy homes, they're actually unable to, start their families or their lives, or postponing that because of the debt they have. And this college debt has increased 510% over the last 10 years. So it's just growing almost exponentially, year by year. And, the average person for 2016, the average student came out of college with $37,000 in student debt, which doesn't sound so bad, and in some instances it really isn't. But, that still equates to paying $370 a month for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Which is a sizable amount. But more important and more striking than that is that every single year, all right, the amount of student loan debt defaults are going up. And so it's increasing every single year. And what this really represents to me is that it was poor planning going in. People didn't understand going in what it is they were signing up for. And on the backside now, once they're out of school and being, forced to have to repay these loans, they're not able to do so. so that we needed to be able to go in and kind of change the way they were looking at it and, do a little bit more planning so that they do understand what the ramifications are going to be on the backside, coming out. So the reason it's such a big problem, the reason people are borrowing so much money is basically because of the cost of college. As I'm sure you're aware,
Yep.
you talk about, just a state school, even if it's a Cal State at this point, you're in for $25,000 a year. You start talking about a UC school, you're in for $35,000 a year.
Wow.
You start talking about,
that's amazing.
a private school.
Yeah.
We used to say 50s, now you're into the 60s. And if you want to talk about an elite school,
Right.
Your Stanfords, your Harvards, your MITs, your Dukes, you're into the $70,000+ a year.
Mm-hmm.
So with those kind of costs associated with college, it's understandable that people don't have the money up front to walk in and just be writing checks to pay for it in most instances there. And so one really needs to take into consideration and realize that when you do look at those costs are really just the sticker price, for college. And so, you shouldn't be scared by the sticker price. You certainly need to be aware of it, but it really is the net cost, that we're dealing with. And so that's really where our focus with Oracle College Planning is, and that is, letting people know that there are ways that one can save, on the cost of college.
Okay.
All right. And so the biggest factor in determining, how much your college is going to cost is college selection. So, and when you talk about college selection to us, what does that mean? That means for a best fit college, as the term is used, it's an academic fit. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they have to fit into the academic pool of that particular university there, but also it has to be a social fit. The student has to feel comfortable on campus. We want them to be able to stay there for 4 years. And more people actually end up leaving school, not because it's so hard academically or they can't do it, but because they're not happy there. So they're looking for a change. Or in some instances, they don't offer the major, that they're looking for now or that they have an interest in, which again, go back to step one that says they didn't do a good job planning, on what schools they should be looking at and for what reasons. So socially, it has to be a fit. So whatever that means to your, to your student, to your son or your daughter, whether that be, the setting, whether it's rural, whether it's urban, whether it's the sports teams, whether it's other activities, that are offered, whatever is necessary for them to feel happy and feel comfortable on campus. And then the last factor, all right, is the financial factor. So it has to be an academic and social fit for the student.
Okay.
But it has to be, it's imperative that it's a financial fit for the family. And this is the key component that we feel a lot of other people leave out, when looking at colleges or considering colleges.
Right.
I mean, it's interesting, but for whatever reason, college is the only purchase that people make or families make where they do it, they just rush in blind. They see a school and they run in there and they buy the school.
Well, the schools are doing a good job of marketing, right? I mean,
schools do a great job of marketing.
You want to wear those, if you're a UCLA fan, you want to wear that baby blue and that gold,
and with good reason. And yes,
yeah.
and this is how schools are chosen a lot of times. On a road trip as a young kid, your student saw Stanford and just decided, oh, he's 8 years old, doesn't know anything about it except, wow, I saw a great game at Stanford, or I had fun while I was at Stanford, and so I want to go to Stanford.
Okay.
And then, heaven forbid, the student actually does well enough academically to get admitted to Stanford, and now you have to figure out how you're going to pay $70,000 a year for the next 4 years, because you certainly can't disappoint your child who has dreamed about going to Stanford.
Okay.
For his entire life. And so this is where the problems begin.
Yeah.
Because, and this is where I say, it borders on insanity, because people will just rush in and say, okay, I'll buy that. We don't do that in any other areas of our life. We don't just go look for houses and find the biggest house, with the ocean view and run in and say, oh, I'm going to buy that, and then figure out, well, how am I going to pay for this? Or we wouldn't even do it with a car. We wouldn't do it with a vacation, but for some reason, we'll do it for college.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably also important. I mean, it's a cumulative effort, right? So the parents are usually going to be like mostly financing the college education, maybe some loans. And so like a future, like in the future, the student will have to pay back the loans, right? But figuring out what the correct fit is for that student's personality, for what they're driven for, it's a really big decision, and it's a really difficult decision, right? Because at 15, 16, when you need to start making these plans, you really don't know what you're going to do the rest of your life, and you really don't know what your interests are. Correct. I was out with a couple friends. We kind of have a little bit of a boys, thing that we do, and we were out at Mastro's actually, and we're having dinner, right?
Name dropper. Okay. Trying to impress, but okay. And it worked actually.
Well, see, I like to pay a lot for meals as well as education, right? And so we're out at Mastro's. We're like, drinking, some wine, and next to us there's actually, a wife and husband. They're on their anniversary, paying a lot of money for a good meal and having some drinks as well. And out of nowhere, the wife actually turns to me. Okay. And I'm going to tie this back into what we're talking about today. Actually turns to me and is like, oh, like this is so wonderful that you guys are friends, this long. And, how long have you guys been friends? And it's like, oh, well, basically this is my cousin, this is my brother, and this is, my brother's best friend. We've been best friends our whole lives. And so, we try to take some time out to kind of catch up in things, at least once a year, because, life gets really busy. And she's like, oh, that's beautiful. And then she like starts to cry and starts to, divulge to us. And she's telling us, it's our such and such anniversary, 20-year anniversary. And, this past week, my kid was actually visiting me from college, and the kid looked at me, and she's a nurse, and her husband's a physician, right? And my kid looked at me and said, Mom, I'm only going to medical school because it's what you want. It's not what I want. Right. And I'm sure, this physician parent and this nurse parent, they're financing 100% of this education. And who the heck knows, this person might not actually want to be a physician. You're paying, I'm assuming they're going to be paying, $200,000 in tuition plus. And then you have somebody who's not actually even motivated to get into the profession that they're looking at, and so having that conversation early on and figuring out, what your kid is really into, just is important
and very important. And the longer I'm in this, the more I realize the earlier all these conversations need to start.
Right.
It used to be that, even like a month ago, that you would say, junior year is a good time to start on this. Right. And you can, you've got a year, you can kind of start covering the bases a little bit, looking at the different schools, talking about the different schools. Really, we impress that, you need to be actually backing it up from there and talking career. That it's very difficult to be picking schools if you don't know what your major is going to be or your career, that you're kind of putting the cart in front of the horse in that instance.
Yeah.
So, and many, 16, 17-year-olds don't really know exactly what it is they want to be doing for the rest of your life. I can promise you that I wasn't going to be a college planner, at that 16, age,
sure.
or have any of those thoughts, or even a financial advisor, anything even close. I'm pretty sure in those days I was just a tennis professional, and that was it. And that was as far as I was looking forward. But you do have those conversations about career, and if they don't know exactly what they want to do, well, then you bring in, attitude and aptitude, and what is it they're good at, what is it that they like doing, what if they could be doing anything they wanted to be doing, what would it be? And well, it could even be video games.
Right.
And well, that's $1 billion industry these days. So there's actually occupations, and many of them, in that industry. So you can't even discount that if that is truly what their passion is and that is what they love to do. But again, it's important to have that conversation first, because once you know the career or what you're looking at, and even when touching on the career, you actually bring in, how much that person makes in that position, in that career.
Right, exactly. What kind of lifestyle do you want to lead,
Exactly.
Right, life work balance also.
Yep.
Right, so
bring it in, your quality of life there. But yes, if they do want to be living, on the house on the hill overlooking the ocean, but yet their desire is to be a school teacher, you have to let them know that nothing against school teachers. We love school teachers, and I sincerely believe that they're underpaid. However, most of them on their salaries aren't going to be living in houses overlooking the ocean. So
Right.
if there is a disconnect, you just want to make sure that they understand that, and that maybe that isn't going to be possible.
Yep.
So all of those, are brought into conversations. But again, once you have the career, you now start looking at, well, what majors feed into that career.
Right.
And so once you have the major nailed down, now you can start shopping for schools. Otherwise, you're just picking a school to pick a school. You may as well pick it, based on the colors, or the teams, or, what their ranking is, in the different areas there. But definitely, you find the major that you're after, you start shopping schools for the majors. And something we have learned over the years is that, the marquee schools, your Stanfords again, your Ivies, your Dukes, your Northwesterns, your Notre Dames, have done a wonderful job of marketing themselves.
Yep.
A brilliant job of marketing themselves to the public and having us believe that these are the only places, are definitely, the best places to go to receive a great education. And that's not true at all. Not discounting them. They're all fine institutions, but they aren't the best at everything they do. At the department level, there's hundreds of other schools and universities out there that will provide you the same quality of education. And the school itself may actually have additional benefits when you talk about career counseling or internships or relationships that not only will get you through school, but actually get you a job when you get out of school. And this is the next part of the conversation that people can tend to miss, and that is that college isn't the end game. College isn't the goal. College is just the stepping stone to get you to the next 40 years of your life, to your career.
Right.
So don't make that 4 years, the end game there, because, you're setting yourself up for failure in that instance. So now backtracking again.
Yep.
When you're looking at schools, we all used to pick schools, and you would call it a safety school, a target school, and a reach school. And all of that was predicated on admissions. Could I get into? And you'd have your safe school that says, well, my grade point average is good enough that I could easily qualify to get into that school. And then your target schools, would have been the schools that, okay, that's pretty much a match with where I am. So, there's a good chance I can get in, but I'm sure not guaranteed I can get in. And then you had your reach schools that said, oh, this is kind of, in my dreams, I'd love to go to this school, and maybe I'll put an application in there in hopes that somehow the sun, the moon, the stars align and I'm going to be, accepted. But surely knowing that the other two, should come through in the event that one doesn't work out. And now the problem is you have to be careful in choosing your schools, because you need to overlay over all of that the financial fit. Because again, here's where that problem, comes back around again, that you say, oh, here's my dream school and I want to go there, but you now get in and you have to pay for that.
Yep.
And so this is where we really caution people on being reasonable, with what they're willing to pay, for their children's educations there. And we have to try and help them keep their emotions in check. Because when your emotions get out of control, and we're talking about our kids and our money,
Right.
Two emotional hot buttons there.
Absolutely.
That come into play, things can get out of control, very quickly. So we try and put a buffer on that to kind of keep people reasonable. So with all that being said, the next step is to say, well, let's see what kind of deal we can get on college. And there are deals to be had. You
Okay.
know, most people, the biggest myth out there is that, I have too much, I make too much, I'm not going to qualify for any financial aid, so I'm not even going to try it.
Yeah.
I'm similar to my neighbor, and his kid went off to college and he didn't qualify for any money, so I'm not going to qualify for any money, so I'm not even going to try and look. And nothing could really be further from the truth.
Yeah.
So when you talk about aid, there's really two types of aid that you're looking at. One would be need-based aid, and need-based aid is basically, predicated on, determined by the financial profile of the family there. How much money do they have? What do they have in income? What do they have in assets? And yes, this is driven, all right, by the financial status of the family. And so you are correct when you say, it is for lower income families are going to receive more, okay, when you talk about need-based aid. However, you'd be surprised at how far up the ladder need-based aid goes. And again, this will come back around to college selection, which college selection drives everything.
Yeah.
Because you can make $150,000, $175,000 a year, which is, pretty solid middle income money there. Maybe not, so much here in Southern California,
Right.
but certainly in other regions of the country, you can be making that kind of money and still qualify for aid, again, depending upon your school selection. Then, past need-based aid, you have what is termed merit-based aid. And merit-based aid, as the name implies, is all handed out, all awarded based on the merits of the student.
Mm-hmm.
And it has nothing to do with the financial profile of the family. Doesn't matter how much money they make or how much money they have, you can still be eligible for merit-based aid. And there is actually much more merit-based aid available than need-based aid. It's a much bigger pool of money. It's a $155 billion pool of money, and that was billion with a B.
Yep.
All right, which in all actuality pays for 31% of all the college costs nationwide come from that pool of money. So it is available. The unfortunate part is how much of it is left on the table each year just because people aren't aware, that they should be looking for it or considering it. Then the last thing, you do have your private scholarships. Private scholarships, represent about 13% of the money that's out there. The merit aid is 86% merit aid scholarships available, and looking at it, but you always look to the merit aid first, but the private scholarships are monies that you would be considering, some in your local area. If I were looking for, private scholarships, I would start by talking to my high school counselors and saying, hey, what scholarships are handed out, on an annual basis here in the area. It could be Kiwanis, could be Rotary, could be Carl's Jr., could be, a CPA firm.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Law offices.
Okay.
All right, that will ante up some money each year, and whether it's 500 or 5,000, it might be available there as extra money.
Okay. So let's back up a little bit because I need a little bit of clarification.
Okay.
So private scholarships, main sources are businesses, right? That want to support a certain cause or a certain type of education. So whether it be STEM or whether it be CPA firms or things like that. That's private scholarship. Where's the money for need-based and merit-based aid usually coming from?
The need-based aid comes from it's a combination: federal government, state government.
Okay.
And then the merit-based aid is coming more from the institutions themselves. From their endowments.
Okay.
And this is where, as we continue with the conversation, you will see that in many instances, there's much more money available from your private schools than your public schools.
Right.
For two reasons. One, they have larger endowments, and two, they don't have all the restrictions on them on how they spend their money. They have a little bit more freedom to spend it as they see fit versus the state schools, which have many more regulations and restrictions on how they're able to dole out money.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay. I didn't mean to derail you.
Nope, not a problem at all.
Yep.
So now, stepping back and starting at the beginning, when you look at need-based aid, All right, it begins with what's called your FAFSA form.
Okay.
And that's your free application for federal student aid.
Yep.
And this, again, is a form that many people, would poo-poo and say, oh, well, I'm not going to qualify for anything. I'm not going to fill it out. But we would encourage, all of our clients, basically anybody, to always fill out a FAFSA form. I mean, if you were Bill Gates, we'd be telling you should be filling out a FAFSA form, because if nothing else, yes, Bill Gates isn't going to be qualifying for any need-based aid. However, it would still make him eligible for federal loans.
Okay.
And whether or not he needs the federal loans or is going to use them, it's just a nice option to have. And so, we would just as soon have the option as not have the option. So you fill out the FAFSA form, and then you never know for sure, again, depending upon your school selection, maybe there is some aid available, that could sneak through there. Now, beside the FAFSA form, all right, and the FAFSA form, the biggest things that they're looking at or considering, on this financial aid form, it's going to be parental income, student income, parent asset, and student assets are the four main factors there, that go into come up with what is called your EFC. EFC standing for your expected family contribution. And that's the amount of money that the government or the school feel that you can afford to pay each year for your child's education.
Okay. And
so in many instances, you'll fill out your FAFSA form and it comes out, just to pick a number, it's going to come out and say $30,000 is your number. And that is your number, all right, that they think you can afford to pay. I've never had a family who really believed they could afford to pay what their EFC came out to, but that's just the way it works.
Okay.
They feel like they're living month to month as it is,
right?
And they have no idea where the school believes they can come up with $30,000 a year to help pay for school. But they do take into consideration, assets that you have, and saying, hey, those monies could be used to, to help to pay for school, or you wouldn't have to be participating or putting money into your 401k plan, during your child's college years. So those monies could be transferred over to help pay for school. I mean, they really don't believe that you should be retiring and having kids in college at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Working till the end to pay for college.
You've got more years to pay after that.
Yeah.
And so that's your FAFSA formula, or your FAFSA and the FAFSA formula that comes up with your EFC, which is your number, which should be the starting point for everybody who is looking at colleges, because this is what determines, what type of family you are and what aid is available, what financial aid is available. So if you have a lower EFC, hey, we could be looking at need-based aid and we could be looking at merit aid. If you have a high EFC, then, okay, maybe need-based aid isn't on the table, but we certainly will now be looking at schools, that afford more merit aid.
Right.
And this is, again, where school selection means everything, because you do have schools, and there are, your elite schools, again, not to always just keep going back to them, but they always stand out and everybody wants to know. But when you talk about your Ivies or your Stanfords or your Dukes or your Notre Dames, those schools will meet 100% of your need. So if you go back to that EFC of 30,000, and those schools, just using round numbers, are $70,000 schools, the equation would be the cost of attendance, which is the $70,000, how much it is for 1 year of school all in, minus your expected family contribution, your EFC, the $30,000, would leave you $40,000 in need.
Okay.
Those schools will meet 100% of need. They want to say that they would never not want somebody to be able to attend any of their schools because they couldn't afford it. Now, you still need to be able to have the grades to be admitted to those institutions,
sure,
which is another problem in and of itself, past the money, but, you will be able to go there, if you have the grades to get in and you don't have the money to afford it, because they will meet your need.
Okay.
The problem is with those schools, they aren't big on merit aid. So when you look at it, your child could be valedictorian and cured cancer in the basement and captain of the lacrosse team and won the national championship, and he wants to go to Yale.
Yeah.
You know how much aid you're going to get from Yale? None, unless you have need-based, qualifications there. But if you're a higher income family, you're not going to receive any merit aid from Yale. They would love to have your student come,
Yeah.
but they would love to have him pay full price also at the same time. Why? Because they can.
They have their pick of the litter.
They have so many people, applying for so few spots that they can afford to charge full price for everybody coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And they do. And so this is where we say, paying full price for a college is a choice, not an obligation. Meaning you can choose to go to Yale and pay full price, or Stanford and pay full price, or you can go to a different school, say a Case Western Reserve, which maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't, but Case Western Reserve, is a college in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's ranked in the top 50 colleges in the country, but it certainly isn't as famous as these other schools. And the difference, they'll compete with a lot of these top schools at the department level for many of their majors, many of their departments, but overall they certainly don't have the prestige of these schools. But the difference is they give merit aid.
Yeah.
So while it is still a $60,000+ school, that child that's valedictorian and cured cancer in the basement and captain of the lacrosse team, they're going to say, hey, we'll give you $30,000 or $40,000 to attend our university. We would love to have you, at our school, and basically we'll bribe you to come here, to attend our school. We will offer you that money. So in essence, you're looking at that and you would be saying, well, $280,000, to go to, your Ivy League school or one of your elite schools, or once you subtract the scholarship amount of money, you'd be talking about $120,000 to go to Case Western.
Yeah.
So you've now got a $150,000 decision, to make there, to say, well, which school would make the most sense, economically there. And of course, there's a lot of other factors that go into making that decision. And who wouldn't want to have that Harvard sticker on the back of our car window that our proud student is going to? But again, is it really necessary? And is it going to make a difference in the next 40 years of his life, whether he graduated from Case Western or whether he graduated from Harvard there? So that's your FAFSA application and your need-based aid and looking at that. Now, when you talk about your merit-based aid, your institutional grants and scholarships, they come in different sizes, shapes, and forms. You do have what are termed your competitive scholarships, and your competitive scholarships are, the schools offer them individually. They do take a separate application, which is why so many people miss these, because they assume by just applying to the school that you would be, in line to be available for these scholarships. But it does take applying separately for these scholarships, and they have some pretty stiff requirements, meaning they're going to require, a high GPA, even just as an entree to be able to put in an application, and some very high test scores. And then you go in, it would also involve writing a special essay and having interviews. And so it is really quite a process there. And in the end, they're going to award, 10 of these or 15 of these, not a whole lot, when you consider the numbers of people coming in. And so these would be called your President's Scholarships or your Emeritus Scholarships for XYZ University. And it would be a nice prize if you could get it, but very small percentage of people are going to be getting those awards. Then you look at, and many schools have what is called a grid scholarship. And this is actually automatic when you do put in your application. So you're automatically, enrolled in participating in the grid scholarship.
Wow. Yeah.
And so how the grid works is they'll just tell you flat out what you're eligible for, based on your merits. And so off the top of my head, one of the schools that does this is University of Alabama. And
big school. Yeah.
Big school. All right. And it's your major schools, your state schools that will be in many instances using the grid scholarship just to help simplify the process. But what it says is that if you have a 3.5 GPA, that's like your ante just to get into the game.
Yeah.
And then you have an ACT score of 27.
Mm-hmm.
For that, they will give you, for that merit, they will give you $3,500 a year for 4 years or $14,000.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, not bad. But if you had a 29 on your ACT instead of a 27, and of course still your 3.5 or better GPA, they will actually give you $14,000 a year, or $52,000 over the 4 years. So there's a $38,000
Wow.
bump by having 2 more points on your ACT score,
Yeah.
which now lends credence to, prep test
Absolutely.
as being your absolute best return on investment that you'll ever make.
Yep.
To go ahead and spend the money to pony up the money and go take a college prep course or 2 or 3 to improve those test scores. Because if that same 29 goes up to a 32, all right, they'll be giving you 36,000 or 26,000. I'm sorry, 107,000.
Wow.
Over the 4 years. So you say, yep, money well spent, in that instance, and bettering your cause. And then schools also will offer what are termed package scholarships, where they just kind of throw a bunch of things in. It may include some of your need-based aid. It may include, what's called some work-study programs, may include some loans, and then may actually include some merit aid as well. And they'll just kind of bundle it for you,
Yeah.
to give you a package there and try and entice you to come to their school. And then past that, getting back to the private scholarships a little bit there, you have to be careful with everything, but you have to be careful with the private scholarships too, because what happens, schools can view this in 2 different ways. You have what is called a blendable, all right, scholarship, which blendable with the schools means, let's just say you received a $5,000 scholarship from Carl's Jr.
Okay.
And you think, great. And you tell the school, hey, I got a $5,000 scholarship from Carl's Jr. And they go, Mr. Petchul, that's fabulous. Congratulations. What that means now is they view that as a family resource. And they say, you've now got $5,000 more to spend for school. So that $20,000 they were going to give you is now going to be $15,000.
And you end up in the same spot. Okay.
And bad can actually go to worse on that one, because your $5,000 is for 1 year and the $20,000 was going to be for 4 years.
Wow.
So you just took a net loss of
That's a big
$15,000
oops.
by being awarded a $5,000 scholarship.
Oh, no.
So then there is, some schools will view your scholarships as stackable, meaning, hey, it's just more money for you, and they won't be subtracting from the aid they were going to offer you in that instance. But it's just one more factor that you need to be aware of, when you go into this.
Yeah.
So how does it play out? Grades, test scores are certainly big factors there, but also, special skills and abilities. They always talk about leadership, or whether it's your debate club or whether your athletic prowess. Yes, you can get an athletic scholarship if you happen to be one of those 1%ers,
Yep.
that have the skill level and find the school that has the money available or the spot available to bring you in. Those are certainly the things they're looking for. And, something that should be emphasized, always, it's, quite possible you could go to a private school for less money than the cost of going to a public school.
Mm-hmm.
Again, once you understand, how the money works.
Right.
If you had let's just say you had a very low EFC, for instance, and you had a $10,000 EFC. And so your $10,000, you say, okay, that's low. And, you still look at that sticker price of the school and get a little bit intimidated there. So you say, well, Cal State Fullerton looks pretty good at $25,000, and I have a $10,000 EFC, which makes me eligible for $15,000 in need-based aid.
Yeah.
And Cal State Fullerton would say, well, we only meet, 53% of that need-based aspect. And so they would take that and they would give you $8,000, and even of that $8,000, it might be $1,000 in a scholarship, so free money, and which is the money we really like the most,
Right.
versus plus $7,000 in either a work-study program or loans to make up the $8,000, their 53% of need that they're meeting, and then it still leaves you having to pay, $7,000. So $7,000's left, along with the $10,000 EFC. You're paying $17,000 to go to Cal State Fullerton, a $25,000 school. And you'd say, well, better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick, but it's not exactly the end all. Versus a private school, and we'll just say for round numbers, it costs $50,000, and you have an EFC of $10,000, and so you have $40,000 in need.
Yeah.
And not that every private school meets 100% of need, but this particular one does. And so now they're going to make up that $40,000. No, they're going to give you $32,000, $33,000 in scholarships, free money, and we love that, and $7,000 in, a work-study program and in loans. And so now you're going to a $50,000 school for $10,000 versus a $25,000 school for $17,000. Now, this still may not be enough. There may be other factors that go into this, and that would certainly be, the career center and internships and maybe specialty programs that would still have you leaning towards maybe the $25,000 school over the $50,000 school. But what it says is never discount the school just based on the sticker price, because you don't know ultimately it's net price that matters.
Yeah.
In the end, how much you're going to be paying. And so this is what leads you to realize that colleges are businesses, okay?
Correct.
And while they're not there to make money necessarily, they are there to improve their ranking and their stature. And so every single year they put together what they want in the way of representation for that incoming class, and what special skills and talents maybe they're looking for to put together that team, that class they're bringing in. And so if you happen to be one that has some of these special skills and abilities, by all means, they're willing to give you more money, because you fit what they're looking for. The other side of that is when you talk about, financial aid only being for, lower income people, again, nothing could be further from the truth, because when you realize that these colleges are businesses, everything they do, okay, has a purpose. And trust me when I say that they understand their return on investment for everything they do. So them giving a high net worth family to a student to come attend their school,
Right.
if they have to give this student $10,000 to come to this school, well, one, they know from the day that student sets foot on campus, he's going to be spending more money in the soda machines. He's going to be spending more money in the cafeteria. He's going to be going to more activities and more ball games. So not only spending more money while he's there, but where do they get all that money that they have in their endowments? Well, they get it from their alumni.
Yeah, donations from the Alumni Association. Right, exactly.
And chances are you're going to be getting much more money coming back to you from your rich students,
Absolutely.
than your lower income students there. And not to say that some of their low income students after they graduate may not go on to do great things.
Right.
But again, understand they know what they're doing and they know what their return on investment is when they hand you money. So they're not shy about handing people, it doesn't necessarily seem fair or right, but they're not shy about handing out money to people who don't necessarily need it as much to attract that student to come to their school. So this is where you say, that with regarding aid, the top 25% of income earners in the country, receive 75%, of the aid.
That's amazing. Yeah, I don't think anybody thinks that, like, off the top of their head, that the top 25% of earners are receiving most of the financial aid that's actually out there, right? And it goes back to that, the conversation you had in the beginning, which is people think it's not worth it to fill out the FAFSA or to do all the legwork right? Because they make too much money, quote, right, to qualify for any aid. And you're saying exactly the opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The money is there. You just have to know, where to find it, how to find it, and what is necessary to get it, and how the schools, delegate that money. How they hand it out, because again, every school is different. And this is where you have to know what type of family you are, to know what type of schools you should be approaching, to receive aid. Are you that merit student? Then that's fine. You want to be looking to those schools that are going to offer you merit. If you have a need base, well, you have the credentials, you have the academics to get in, well, your elite schools, would be a great deal for you. You want to go back to Yale if maybe you're not valedictorian, but maybe you're top 20 in your class, and you cured cancer in the basement, and your lacrosse team won the national championship, and you have an EFC of $10,000. Well, going to Yale for $10,000, would be a home run.
Absolutely.
There would be no reason not to want to do that. So now the last thing that we would really be touching on here would be, there are other ways, to save on the cost of college.
Right.
It isn't just the financial aid that's being offered through, the government or the institutions there. And this really comes into play, more often when we're dealing with families who are business owners. And you look to some of the opportunities that are out there. You have what's called the American Opportunity Tax Credit.
Right.
All right, which does have a phase out between $160,000 and $180,000. So everybody doesn't necessarily qualify for it. But, those of you who do, okay, it's $2,500 a year. And
Yep.
so over the 4 years of college, you're going, well, there's a $10,000, tax credit. We really call these tax scholarships.
Correct. Yeah.
Taking advantage of it and keeping it in that college realm there. Other strategies that are utilized, are gifting, highly appreciated stocks to your kids. And yes, you have to be aware of, the kiddie tax, but, we look at that and work with that. But, in gifting it, to your child and putting it in an UGMA and then distributing it over the 4 years of college, you can't avoid, easy for me to say, but you can't avoid the capital gains, on those taxes and have a savings there. Another strategy or example would be, hiring your child and putting them on the payroll. And as you know, with the changes in tax reform, the amount of money you can be paying them is now up to $12,000. Is that right?
Without being yeah, exactly, without paying any tax, right?
Without paying any tax.
And even, I mean, but it could go higher than that, right? Because if you're a really high income earner and you're paying tax at the highest rate, I mean, any dollar that you can pass on to your kid, even if it's taxable, it's going to be taxed at a lower rate than you are, and so you're going to be saving money there. Right. Only caveat to that is they actually have to be doing something for the business. You can't just, pay them $100,000 salary because that's what tuition is. Like it has to be reasonable compensation for whatever it is that they're doing. Usually they're going to be, a non-exempt employee. They're going to have to clock in and clock out and things like that. But, getting your kid to pay for his own college via your business is a great strategy, because you're going to afford your kid a lot more flexibility than another employer will, right? And you'll hold the job for them. And you'll make a few exceptions here and there, but you can't, like I said, you can't just pay them what the tuition is going to be. It needs to be structured the right way, like a bona fide employment. But there's a lot of wiggle room there too.
Right. And we can use that just as, one other piece to the puzzle there. We'll stack a lot of these on top of each other.
Yeah,
where,
and then you save a lot of money.
A lot of singles, still win ball games there.
Yep.
In the savings there. And then one last plan would be a Section 127, a tuition reimbursement plan, which, if structured properly, could also, save you some money or get you some money towards your child's education. Oh, excuse me, I have a call.
Oh, go ahead and take it. It's fine.
All right. And then I know one that's near and dear to Gabe here is the community college option.
Well, I'm saying that is an option, right? If you don't know what you want to do.
And it is an option, and it's a good option for, for many people. It's certainly a very economical option,
Right.
when you consider the cost of a community college, because in most instances there, you can be still living at home, you can be working at the same
Yeah.
time, and then going to school, and just to get all your prerequisites out of there and have those knocked out. And so you can transfer after finishing there to your 4-year institution, just to finish it up. And that's still going to be the degree, the diploma you get to, to hang on the wall. Nobody knows that you went to a junior college, for the first couple years there. It's only the end result that they're interested in. Now, even in looking at that, I know a lot of people, make that decision because it's the one they know.
Right.
And with all, we know and we deal with financial aid, we would still be looking at that. And if it was, there's a lot of reasons somebody may be going to the community college. They may not be very motivated. Maybe they aren't sure what they want to do. The parents don't want to invest the big bucks to send them off to a school just to have them crash and burn. and I understand that. So there are a lot of factors. But if it's just sheer economics, again, you still possibly have the opportunity, if it is lower income there, maybe there's need-based money, maybe we can get them into a 4-year school, where, the surroundings and the environment are actually going to be better for the student, and the chances of success that much greater, because you're going to be in a situation where you have everybody who is focused and who is studying and trying to graduate in 4 years, and your opportunity to graduate in 4 years from a private school is much greater than from a public school, and especially, starting at the community college level, because it may take you 2 years, 3 years, even just to get through the community college level. And then depending upon how all your credits transfer over to the 4-year school, well, you may still end up spending 2 or 3 years at the 4-year school, which, to say you're going to get out of a Cal State, in 4 years is really, you're swimming upstream in that one. It's against the odds. 34% of the people graduate, in 4 years from a Cal State, and it's only 53% after 6 years that graduate from a Cal State.
And if you're talking about Southern California, like Cal State Long Beach, don't even think about graduating from Cal State Long Beach in less than 5 years, right?
Right.
Or Cal State Fullerton, or
Same thing. Now the UCs,
little
they're
better.
Actually very good. I mean, they're up there actually ahead of, the privates. On average, you start to talk about 50% to 60% graduate in 4 years. And
that's good, actually.
Up into the 70s. But the UC schools, I have to say, for the most part, they're 62% right now graduate in 4 years.
Wow.
Which, you have the challenge. One, you have to be able to get in. They aren't so easy to get into anymore. That's not a gimme in any way, shape, or form to get into a UC school. And then two, you have to be careful about your major, because depending upon your major, some of these majors, are impacted. They're using the word impaction. And they tell you going in, you're not going to be able to get all the classes you need to be able to graduate in 4 years.
Yeah.
So your $35,000 a year cost isn't really for 4 years. It's really for 5 years. So that may be paying a little bit more to go to a private school that you can get out in 4 years. There's a school in Ohio, Denison University, which actually, one, gives merit aid, which is how I know about it, because any school that's out there handing out merit aid, we're aware of. They have a 78% graduation rate in 4 years. You say that's astronomical. I mean, 80%, 4 out of 5 kids are graduating, on time in 4 years. And so you say, sometimes there are other reasons that you'd say, hey, I'd pay a little bit more to have my student in that school, just hoping that he's part of that 80% that's in and out of there in 4 years.
Yeah.
And that's really it.
God.
Take a breath.
Well, that was amazing. I've never experienced somebody so prepared. It seems like you do this a lot, actually.
Well, I've had some practice. I have these conversations a lot.
Yeah.
Not necessarily all of it compacted here, condensed into 1 hour as fast as you can, but
well, I mean, you're obviously an expert in what you're doing. I think for most families, going into these decisions, they want to do what's best for their kids. They're ready to almost write whatever check is necessary, and really they're more worried about making the money to pay for college than actually taking the time to sit down on the weekend or whatever and do all this research, and nobody can do the research that. Yeah, I mean, the sheer amount of information that you just laid out here, that's just really scratching the surface. Nobody has the time to put this together unless it's their profession, which it's your profession.
And the information is there, meaning, there's 12,000 books on college planning.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of information out there, and there was 1 billion Google searches last year on college planning.
Yeah.
But you're right, unless you're ready to make a career of it and sit down and start reading all of these books and trying to piece this all together, and then still understanding, with 3,500 plus colleges, 4-year colleges in the country, and how each and every one of them handle need-based aid versus merit-based aid and the qualifications to get in, then yes, there may be some benefit in working with somebody who has already done that work for you.
Yep. Yeah. And, just like you're trying to get out of college in 4 or 5 years, right? So that you don't have to pay for that extra year, and then time being more valuable than money, actually, right? So that year, I think, hiring somebody like you, or having at least coming and having a conversation with you, is invaluable. Like you shouldn't go without it.
Right. It is time well spent.
So,
and you do talk about that 5th year of colleges, and it is an expensive year.
Yeah.
As a CPA, as a financial advisor, of sorts, you look at that and you say, you have to pay, not only do you have to pay tuition for another year, which it is bad going to worse again, because you've lost all your financial aid in the 5th year if you did have any.
Ouch.
It's exhausted after 4 years. So
Ouch.
now you're paying full retail for your 5th year, and then it's what's called the opportunity cost. The average college graduate is going to be making $42,000 a year their first year of work, and so not only are you not earning the $42,000, you're having to pay out whatever it is, call it $30,000. So you've just lost $72,000 in having to attend school for another year.
Yep. Yeah. Sounds like you'll be paying loans for a long time. Okay. I'm going to wrap this up. You've gone through so much today. Like, I need to have you back on the podcast again to jump into more detail on some of these topics.
I mean, each one of these subjects could probably be
fill an hour
just in working through it.
Okay. All right. Before we wrap up today, I want to let everybody know who's listening or who's watching us. Where do people find you?
Okay. My name is Dane Petchul, so you could Google me. There's a good start, and that would work. The company is Oracle College Planning. So Google that, and you will find me as well. So Dane at Oracle College Planning. If you want my email, phone number 949-398-4300.
This has been great, Dane. I appreciate you coming on.
It's a wrap.